So today we're going to be talking about one of the most underappreciated fighters right now on the UFC's active roster. I'd maybe go one step further and say he is the most underappreciated right now. I'd actually maybe even go one step further. This guy might be the most underappreciated fighter in UFC history. Who I'm talking about is Merab. Now, let's start off with, I hated Merab for years. I was an active Merab hater when he beat Jose Aldo, Henry Cejudo, Sean O'Malley, when he beat fucking Petr Yan. I've just recently forgiven for that one. But look, when Merab became champion at UFC 306, I thought the UFC was done. I thought the UFC was over as a company. It was going to fall into bankruptcy. They had him as champion now, and then most recently to that event, Bilal Muhammad became champion. I just thought, look, the UFC's done. But I've matured, I've got older, and I've understood that Merab is a necessity to the UFC. This guy's one of the biggest stars they have right now. I'm going to say that again. This guy right here, Merab, is one of the biggest stars the UFC have right now. This guy is entertaining inside and outside the cage. I'm just going to be honest. I'm just being completely honest here. But we're not going to be talking about is Merab entertaining today. All that shit. No. We're here to talk about Merab being a top 10 fighter of all time and being the greatest in his division. And some fighters that people might see these takes as controversial, but some fighters that Merab is above in terms of all time, in my opinion. Let's start off with him being the Bantamweight GOAT. Obviously, look, a lot of people who have a working brain located in their head and not up their ass would kind of just look at Merab's resume and just understand that he's the GOAT. Now, I think we're getting to a place now in MMA where names on resumes are more important than just having a bunch of title defenses. Now, the bantamweight division has never really had a champion that's had a load of defenses. You've currently got Aljamain Sterling and Dominic Cruz tied with 3. I think Merab's the greatest, then Aljo, then Dominic Cruz, but a lot of people don't give Aljamain Sterling his flowers and say that Dominic Cruz is better. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to compare him to Dominic Cruz today. Like I said, I have Aljo number 2, but a lot of people want to have Dominic Cruz there, so let's just debunk why Dominic Cruz is not the greatest bantamweight of all time. So, in terms of names on resumes, like I've said, this guy has 3 title defenses in the UFC. Names on resumes, one that stands out right away, right there, Demetrious Johnson. Now, Demetrious Johnson is a flyweight. Now, people might say, well then how can you say Henry Cejudo is a good win for Aljo and Merab? The difference being is Demetrious Johnson was just naturally a flyweight. That was his weight class. And Henry Cejudo has become a bantamweight champion. That's the key difference, if we're being honest. He has become champion of this division. He's also beaten Dominic Cruz by finish. That's why Henry Cejudo is a better win than Demetrious Johnson when I'm comparing Aljo and Merab's wins over Henry Cejudo to Dominic Cruz's over Demetrious Johnson. Henry Cejudo held the title. That's why I value that win more. You've got TJ Dillashaw now. This fight was a split decision. It happened way back in 2016. I knew it was close, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, Dominic Cruz robbed TJ Dillashaw just to try and prove my point. I haven't rewatched back that fight, so I can't really remember. But this right here, when you think of Dominic Cruz and you think of his big wins, Uriah Faber is one that a lot of people would bring up. Now, Uriah Faber is a legend in the UFC. The California Kid, man, by God. Right, but let's talk about these things here. When you think Dominic Cruz, and people like to say one of his best wins is Uriah Faber, if not his best. This right here is my issue. What's Uriah Faber's biggest accomplishments in the UFC? Number 1, he done the Ultimate Fighter with Conor McGregor. Number 2, he lost to Dominic Cruz. That's what Uriah Faber's known for. The guy is known, no disrespect, for losing twice to Dominic Cruz. That's facts. Now, when you compare Merab's resume, where he's beat Sean O'Malley, he's beaten Petr Yan, he's beaten Henry Cejudo, he's beaten Jose Aldo, he's beaten Umar Nurmagomedov. Like, he's beaten 4 former UFC world champions, one of them being a double champ. I don't see how, when you look at resumes, you can say Dominic Cruz is better all the time. Having 2 more title defenses over Merab, when you look at the names Merab has beaten compared to Dominic Cruz, I just don't even think you can compare it, to be honest. I just don't get it. I really don't understand how people are still holding on to Dominic Cruz being the bantamweight GOAT. It's just nostalgia, so I kind of get that point. But when you look at resumes and names on it, you cannot say he's got a better resume than Merab. Now, when we're talking about Merab, like I said, I included Umar Nurmagomedov as a really good win there for the guy. Now, a lot of people might say Umar Nurmagomedov isn't a good win, which I've seen people kind of say that online. But let's not pretend that Umar wasn't the favourite going into this matchup, and let's not pretend that people were glazing the life out of Umar before he went in there and fought Merab, including myself. I wasn't glazing Umar. I wanted Merab to win, but I thought Umar was going to beat Merab. I think the Umar Nurmagomedov win for Merab will be like when Mayweather beat Canelo early on. Like, the win will just age really, really well, and I'm predicting that's what's going to happen with Merab. Right? Now, this right here, you're seeing GSP. I'm not saying Merab's a better fighter all time than GSP. I just want to make that clear. I am not saying that. GSP, for a lot of people, including myself, is a top 3 fighter of all time. I repeat again, I am not trying to say Merab's better than him. But I've just used GSP as an example here to kind of show the double standards for MMA fans. So people like to say Merab's boring, he's a decision merchant, shit like that. But people won't talk about GSP going from July 2009 all the way till November 2013 with no finishes. No one's going to talk about that at all. This guy went 4 years with not one single finish in the UFC. But people will glaze GSP for this time period. People will glaze him for this time period, but will shit on Merab for going to a decision against some of the big names that I've named that he's faced. Arguably tougher opponents than what GSP has faced here. Obviously, there's some good wins. Johnny Hendricks at the time, good win. Nick Diaz, Carlos Condit, Josh Koscheck isn't a bad win. But what I'm saying is, people will glaze GSP and say what a fighter he was, but miss out the fact that he also went to a lot of decisions. Like, for years, this guy was going to decisions. That's what I mean by double standards in terms of the MMA fan base. Now, let's move on to some fighters that I would say Merab's above all time. Let's start off with Kamaru Usman. Now, I don't think this is a hot take if you really think about it. People might instantly think it's a hot take. Obviously, Kamaru Usman, again, has way more title defenses than Merab. But again, when it comes to names on resumes, I think that kind of has to, like, mean more. I think it has to mean more nowadays, if I'm being honest. Now, Kamaru Usman, it's crazy how the narrative switched on Kamaru Usman. Everybody hated him, said he was a decision merchant, and then we see the guy obviously become champion, go on this crazy dominant run, and then everybody loves the guy now. But Kamaru Usman, I'm going to be honest, legacy is a bit overrated. I'm just going to be honest, especially his championship reign. Like, Colby Covington was coming off a really, really long layoff then. He beat Colby Covington, which was a really, really close fight. Arguably lost this. He beat Masvidal. He knocked Masvidal out. Masvidal hadn't done anything to warrant that title shot after losing to him a year previous. The Gilbert Burns win is really, really good for Kamaru Usman, in my opinion. Burns was really on fire at the time he beat him, and he beat him really, really impressively. Then before that, you've got another fight with Colby Covington that, again, he was arguably losing. He did stop Colby in the 5th round, but if he didn't stop Colby, there's a high chance that Colby Covington would have beat Kamaru Usman in that matchup. And then you've got this one right here, the best win of his career against Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley is also one of the most underappreciated fighters in UFC history. This guy right here is a top 3 welterweight of all time. I know people like to say he's Jake Paul's son, but this guy right here was a serious, serious competitor. Obviously now the first round draft pick for the GFL, which I think is crazy. I do believe his best days are way behind him, but that there is his best win. So when you look at champions that Kamaru Usman has beaten, he's beaten RDA, he's beaten Sean Strickland, he has beaten Leon Edwards, and he's beaten Tyron Woodley. So he has beaten 4, which is the exact same as Merab. I just think Merab has a better resume in terms of name value. Like, when you look at Kamaru Usman's title reign, a lot of it is just rematches with Colby and Masvidal. Now, I'm not hating on Kamaru Usman. I think he is a top 15 fighter of all time, but I just couldn't have him above Merab. Now, let's get to the main event. Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, Merab is better. Let's just get this out of the way. Merab isn't a better fighter than Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's not, right? But all-time list for me is, I have it just accomplishment based. So your title defenses, your resumes, shit like that. That's what, in my opinion, matters the most. Not like People won't look back and go how dominant fighters were in their fights. It's mainly like their names that they've beaten and how many title defenses they've had. Again, Khabib Nurmagomedov has more title defenses than Merab, but like I've said, names on resumes do mean more to me than title defenses. Look, Khabib is one of the most dominant fighters we've ever seen, and I think if he didn't retire, he definitely would have been on track to becoming top 5 all time, right? I don't have him top 5. I really don't. I don't see how people can have him top 5. I just don't understand their argument. This right here seems to be a lot of the argument that people have. Khabib Nurmagomedov being 29-0. And look, being 29-0 undefeated in MMA is really, really impressive. He is 13-0 in the UFC. But before he joined the UFC, Khabib beat up cans that were essentially there to lose to Khabib. That's what their whole sole purpose was. They didn't go there looking to try and win. And obviously, you do have journeymen in the sport. They are an integral part of the sport. They give these young up and coming fighters, the rounds that they need. They give them different looks because they're more experienced. But that wasn't even the case for Khabib. He was just fighting cans that weren't even journeymen. They were just guys that were probably fucking picked off the street, sent in to lose to him. But let's look at his UFC career, because that's what matters the most. Now, what hinders Khabib is the names on his resume, right? I think this one right here against RDA is a really slept on win for him. That was before RDA became champion and he beat him unanimously. That there is a really, really good win that people who do try and defend Khabib in this argument don't include. I think that there is a really, really good win. Then when you look at other stuff, you've got Ala Quinta. We're not counting that, right? These right here are kind of like the main arguing points for why Khabib should be above Merab, right? Conor McGregor, look, I'm going to be honest, Conor McGregor was coming off a really long layoff in there, and when he got in there against Khabib Nurmagomedov, he'd been out of the cage for years, obviously coming off the Mayweather fight. He was drinking before that. Look, you can say this is next level cope because I am a McGregor fan. Obviously, I was wanting McGregor to win. You can say that, but I'm just being honest. Good name, but under the circumstances, he really should have won that. Dustin Poirier, great win. Justin Gaethje, great win. These right here are two really, really good wins for Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, another thing that does hinder Khabib, which is kind of like the same narrative that is going towards Pereira, but it's going to be sorted for Pereira when he fights Magomed Ankalaev, is the fact that all Khabib Nurmagomedov's best wins are against strikers. Now, I will defend Khabib on this part here that it's not his fault that everybody in the top of his division was strikers. It's the same with Pereira. Like, people complain he didn't fight grapplers. What the fuck's the guy meant to do? Go down the list and pick, oh, you're number 13, you're a grappler, let me fight you. Instead of going, no, the number one contender is a striker. You know what I mean? I don't understand that argument, but that is an argument that people will use against Khabib. They say he didn't fight any high-level grapplers, and that is true. And you can talk about Merab. This guy has fought high-level grapplers in Umar Nurmagomedov. He's fought Henry Cejudo, another high-level grappler. Merab's been in there with so many different styles, and every time he comes out on top, I don't see how this guy isn't top 10 all time. This right here, I don't even know if I'm going to post this because it's just been like a kind of like just all over the place, just me talking about Merab. But I do think this guy is criminally underrated right now in the UFC. Definitely one of the best fighters they have. Now, people might go, he's got shit striking and blah, blah, blah. Like, what is his main thing? People will complain that, oh, he's only good because of his cardio. But when Colby Covington was beating Robbie Lawler back in them days in RDA, people were saying like, oh, his cardio, people just can't keep up with the cardio that Colby Covington has. Again, going back to the double standards of the MMA fan base. This guy's top 10 all time. He's better than Khabib. He is the greatest UFC bantamweight of all time. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you again in the next one.